Retro Quickies, Action 52, games 11 through 15. Oh my god, I'm still doing this. Yes, despite my survival instincts kicking in, I'm back to keep doing this as we continue our in-depth look at each of these games in Action 52, though that might be a bit of a stretch considering each of these games are about as deep as a plastic kiddie pool. Speaking of, Dam Busters! Top-down shooter where you play as a beaver shooting something or other at other beavers while weaving your way around a winding path to try and get to the end of the level. The game is incredibly boring, but also terrible at the same time. The enemies fire incredibly slow-moving attacks towards you, which makes progressing difficult when you have a spray of enemy bullets in front of you, and actually hitting enemies with your own attacks is difficult, especially when they jerk back and forth. The hitboxes are also really weird in this game, as you can't actually get close to the walls or the edges of a bridge or anything. It's very specific on where you can stand, which can cause some problems where there are built-in dead ends on the path that you're walking on, and you can easily get stuck because the screen can't scroll backwards. Beyond that, the color palette doesn't do the game any favors. The game already looks plain and ugly on its own, but you and the enemies at least contrast against it nicely. But unfortunately, the same can't be said for most shots, which tend to blend into the ground or background pretty heavily, so while enemy shots move really slow, that doesn't matter much when you can't see what you're walking into. Thrusters! A pretty generic name for a pretty generic game. It's another scrolling space shooter where you shoot enemy ships to progress. There really isn't anything to say about this one. It plays just like most of the other shooters on the cartridge. It is baseline playable, but that's it. The only interesting thing about this game is the fact that you can't beat the second level because the game freaks out and crashes at the end, which is why I can't really call this game competent. Haunted Halls of Wentworth. Another platformer where you wander the halls of a haunted mansion shooting ghosts. I'll give them credit, the player character this time is actually decently rendered, but that's about where the credit ends, as it controls just as poorly as Ooze did, and has an additional glitch where jumping too high can actually kill you for no other reason than you're just too high off the ground. Of course, dealing with the enemies isn't any easier, since they're usually approaching you from the air, out of reach of your weapon, or attacking you from behind unexpectedly. Apart from the enemies, the occasional pit is the only obstacle that you run into. But because of the sudden appearance of enemies, playing this game is actually a lot tougher than it should be, since you usually have to move backwards, turn around, jump, and then fire. And since the controls in this game are anything but smooth, you typically have one, maybe two tries before the ghost is guaranteed to kill you. Couple that with the slow movement speed that makes each level feel like it goes on forever, and you've got another good candidate for a sleep aid. Chill out. I wish I could, buddy, I really wish I could. This is a single-screen platformer in the same vein as Illuminator, but rather than flickering lights, you have gaps in the platforms and incredibly slow-moving projectiles. These slow shots are honestly one of the worst parts of the game, considering that they take forever to move across the screen. They don't disappear until they reach the opposite end of the screen, and yes, you do have a health bar so you can afford to take a hit or two, but there's no after-hit invincibility, meaning that there are multiple snowballs being thrown out, and you're going to get hit by every single one of them. This is also the first game where fall damage comes into play, and yes, basically any game where you can fall from any height will have fall damage in it, and the distance you have to travel before it activates is insanely small, hence why those gaps in the platform are actually the most dangerous part. In fact, because of the horrible jumping controls, most of your deaths in this game are going to come from falling off a ledge, which, get used to hearing that because it's going to be a common theme going forward. Sharks! You're a diver shooting sharks with a harpoon gun. That's about it. But the big issue is that, much like Jupiter Scope, it's incredibly boring because not a lot happens. Most of the time, you're just floating there in the empty blue space, hoping that sharks will spawn in, and that you can actually line up a shot before they disappear off the other side of the screen. At first, you'd assume that you only have about 2/3 of the screen to work with, but that bottom graphic is actually just part of the background. You can swim through it no problem. The only big change up to this game is that if you do manage to stave off boredom enough to get through to level 3, the game introduces jellyfish as a new enemy type, who do make the game more interesting, mostly by making it impossible to progress, since, unlike the sharks, who have to spawn in from the right or left side of the screen, jellyfish will spawn in anywhere, including on top of your character, and you can see how that might be a bit of a problem to survivability. Again, credit where it's due, I can at least tell what everything is supposed to be, a compliment that can't really be given to every game on this cartridge. And that's another 5 games in the bag, through the hoop, done and dusted. But if we keep running into space shooters, I'm gonna warn you, I'm going to have much less to say, because so many of them play the same without any real differential gimmick between them. And no, that's not me saying I won't talk about them, but you know that space shooters make up the bulk of this collection, so yeah, fair warning on that front. Let's keep going, shall we? I'll see you in the next video, please make this madness stop.